Admiral Kim Hyun gripped the railing of the command deck as the massive viewport showed him the sight he had dreamed of for 10 long years. The sleek black hulls of hegemony dreadnoughts were turning away from Earth's solar system, their menacing, red engine trails fading into the darkness of space. The last enemy fleet was retreating through the swirling blue portal of hyperspace. "All enemy vessels have jumped to hyperspace, sir," reported Lieutenant Wang Do-hyun from the sensor station. Long-range scanners confirm no hostile contacts within 50 light-years. The bridge of the flagship Unity erupted in cheers. Officers who had fought alongside each other through countless battles embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Some fell to their knees in exhaustion and relief. The Galactic Liberation War was finally over. Hyun allowed himself a moment to close his eyes and remember the beginning. 10 years ago, the Hegemony Empire had arrived at Earth's doorstep with a massive invasion fleet. Their insectoid warriors had demanded humanity's immediate surrender and integration into their slave empire. Earth's response had been simple: never. What followed was the bloodiest conflict in human history. The hegemony had superior numbers and technology, but they underestimated humanity's greatest weapon, their refusal to give up. Planet after planet, moon after moon, humans fought with desperate courage. They turned civilian cargo ships into warships, mining stations into fortresses, and agricultural colonies into military bases. The cost had been unimaginable. Whole worlds had been turned to glass by orbital bombardment. The hegemony's bioweapons had poisoned entire star systems. Humanity had lost nearly half its population, but they had survived. More than survived, they had won. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth Command," announced Communications Officer Lee Ga-young. President Yang Mi-kyung's weathered face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, the ruins of New Seoul were visible through the office windows, but reconstruction crews were already at work. "Admiral Hyun, congratulations on humanity's greatest victory. You and your fleet have earned the eternal gratitude of our species." "Thank you, Madam President. The credit belongs to every human who refused to surrender." The celebration was interrupted when Commander Park Soo-jin approached with a datapad, her expression grim despite the victory around them. Soo-jin had been Hyun's intelligence officer throughout the war, and he had learned to trust her instincts completely. "Sir, we have a problem. Intelligence Division has been analyzing financial records from the war period. Several high-ranking Federation officials show suspicious transaction patterns." Hyun's smile faded. "What kind of patterns?" "Large payments from untraceable accounts, mostly received during critical battle periods, cross-referencing with military outcomes. It appears these payments coincided with tactical intelligence leaks that resulted in Federation losses." The Admiral's blood ran cold. Some of humanity's worst defeats had seemed like impossible bad luck, enemy forces appearing exactly where Federation fleets were most vulnerable. Supply convoys ambushed along supposedly secret routes, defensive positions targeted with uncanny precision. "How many officials are we talking about?" 17 confirmed, possibly more. "The worst part is their current status." Soo-jin's voice dropped to a whisper. "They've all disappeared within the last 72 hours. Disappeared how? Private shuttles, fake identification documents, cleared customs at various outer rim stations. They took classified star charts, prototype weapon schematics, and detailed personnel files with them." Hyun slammed his fist on the railing. Around the bridge, the celebration continued, but he felt like ice water was flowing through his veins. "They're running. It gets worse, sir. Some of these people had access to our most sensitive operations." Colonel Cho Jin-seok oversaw Special Operations Command. Dr. Lim Hye-jin led our biodefense research. "If they're working with the enemy..." The implications hit Hyun like a physical blow. These weren't just corrupt officials skimming money. They were traitors who had actively helped the hegemony kill millions of humans. Within hours, Hyun found himself in the secure briefing room of Earth Command headquarters, the holographic. Displays showed star charts marking the last known positions of the missing officials. General Nambora, head of military intelligence, stood at the center of the room, addressing a select group of officers. "Ladies and gentlemen, while we celebrate victory, we face a new threat. These individuals possess enough classified information to restart the war on the enemy's terms. Command has authorized the formation of a special unit, the Rogue Hunter Division. Captain Lee Min-ho stepped forward. Min-ho had earned his reputation during the siege of Proxima, where he had tracked down hegemony infiltrators who had been sabotaging human defenses. His success rate was perfect. He had never failed to find his target. Captain Lee, you understand why you're here? Yes, General. These traitors cost us entire fleets. How many good people died because of their betrayal? General Nam's expression hardened. Conservative estimates put it at 2 million Federation personnel. Civilian casualties could be 3 times that number. Min-ho's jaw set like stone. He had lost friends, family, and fellow soldiers to what they thought was the fortune of war. Now he knew it was murder. Your mission is simple but not easy, General Nam continued. Hunt them down, every single one. Bring them back to face justice. For their crimes against humanity, the Federation's reputation depends on showing that betrayal has consequences. Dead or alive? Min-ho asked quietly. Whatever it takes, Captain. These people chose their side when they sold out their own species. Min-ho accepted the assignment without hesitation. Humanity had survived the greatest threat in their history, but now they faced something potentially worse. Enemies who looked like them, talked like them, and knew all their secrets. The war was over, but the hunt was just beginning. The stealth corvette, Vengeance, emerged from the swirling vortex of hyperspace like a shadow materializing from nothingness. Its black hull absorbed the distant starlight, making it nearly invisible against the cosmic backdrop. So Captain Lee Min-ho stood in the cramped bridge, his eyes fixed on the massive structure floating ahead, Kronos Mining Station. The station looked like a mechanical spider wrapped around a dying asteroid. Hundreds of mining arms extended from its central hub, boring deep into the rock to extract precious metals. Cargo ships swarmed around it like metal insects, their engines glowing as they ferried resources to the outer colonies. Passive sensors only, Min-ho ordered quietly. I don't want them knowing we're here until it's too late. Lieutenant Choi Da-un hunched over her console, fingers dancing across holographic displays. She had been tracking energy signatures for the past 3 days, following digital breadcrumbs across half the galaxy. Her expertise in electronic warfare had made her invaluable to the Rogue Hunter Division. Got him, she whispered, excitement creeping into her voice. High-energy plasma signatures consistent with military-grade training equipment. Lower section, mining level 7. Sergeant Kim Woo-jin checked his assault rifle for the 10th time. The grizzled veteran had served with Min-ho during the Hegemony War, losing his left arm to alien bioweapons at the Battle of Titan. His cybernetic replacement was stronger than flesh, but the scars on his soul ran deeper. Former Colonel Yu, Tae-min, Min-ho said the name like a curse. 2 years ago he was commanding the defense of the Rigel system. Now intelligence says he's running weapons to pirates and recruiting Federation deserters. The mining station was perfect cover for criminal activity. No central government controlled this region of space, and the constant flow of ships made it easy to hide illegal operations. Smugglers, pirates, and worse, came here to conduct business. Stay away from Federation oversight. Sir, I'm picking up interesting communications chatter, reported Corporal Lim Jinar from the communications station. References to special training and preparing for the next phase. Whatever Yu is planning, it's bigger than just selling weapons. Min-ho studied the tactical display showing the station's layout. Multiple docking bays, residential sections, industrial areas, and deep mining tunnels created a 3-dimensional maze. Perfect for hiding, terrible for hunting. We go in during the next shift change, he decided. Maintenance workers, nothing suspicious. Da-un, can you loop their security cameras? Already done, Captain. I've created a 12-minute window where their surveillance system will show empty corridors. The team suited up in standard mining gear, work clothes, tool belts, and breathing apparatus. Their weapons were hidden in equipment cases marked with fake mining company logos. To any casual observer, they looked like another maintenance crew. The Vengeance docked at Bay 7 without incident. Min-ho's forged credentials passed inspection, and they made their way through the crowded corridors. The station reeked of recycled air, industrial lubricants, and unwashed bodies. Miners from a dozen different worlds worked alongside humans, their alien features hidden behind protective gear. "Target is 3 levels down," Da-Un reported through their secure comm channel. "I'm reading 20-plus heat signatures in the training area." They descended through maintenance shafts and service corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares where security was tighter. The deeper they went, the more the station's civilian facade fell away. These lower levels were industrial, harsh, and dangerous. The sound reached them first, the distinctive whine of plasma weapons being charged and discharged. Then came voices shouting military commands, the echo of boots on metal, and the clash of combat training. Minho peered through a ventilation grate into a converted cargo bay. What he saw made his blood boil. 30 former Federation soldiers were running combat drills with stolen military equipment. They moved with professional precision, executing flanking maneuvers and suppression tactics. Their leader stood on a raised platform, barking orders with familiar authority. Colonel Yu Tae-min looked older than his personnel file photo, his black hair now streaked with silver. But his eyes still held the same cold intelligence that had once made him one of the Federation's most promising officers. "Remember, the Federation trained you to fight aliens," Yu addressed his recruits. "But the next war won't be against the hegemony. It'll be against other humans who refuse to see the truth." Minho signaled his team. They moved into position around the training area, using the industrial equipment for cover. These weren't random criminals. They were organized. "Disciplined and very dangerous, Yu Tae-min," Minho called out, stepping into the open with his weapon drawn. "You're under arrest for treason against the Terran Federation." The training stopped instantly. 30 weapons swung toward Minho's position, but his team was already moving. Da-Un disabled the bay's lighting, plunging everything into darkness, except for the glow of weapon sights and emergency strips. "Captain Lee Minho," Yu's voice carried clearly through the darkness. "I wondered when the Federation would send their best hunter after me." Plasma bolts filled the air with deadly light. Minho's team used their superior positioning and night vision equipment to devastating effect. These deserters might be well trained, but they weren't prepared for a coordinated assault by elite Federation special forces. "You think you're serving justice?" Yu shouted over the gunfire. "You're just another tool of a government that sent millions to die for their pride." "Those millions died fighting for freedom," Minho replied, advancing through the chaos. "You helped the enemy kill them." The firefight was brutal but brief. Most of the deserters surrendered when they realized they were outmatched. But Yu had other plans. Emergency klaxons began wailing as blast doors started sealing. The traitor was triggering the station's emergency lockdown, turning the mining facility into a maze of closed passages. "You want to know the truth, Captain?" Yu's voice echoed from hidden speakers. "I didn't betray humanity to help the hegemony win. I helped them lose in the right way." Minho pursued through twisting maintenance tunnels, following heat signatures and audio traces. His quarry was skilled, using every trick of military training to stay ahead. "The hegemony were just the opening act," Yu continued, his voice growing more distant. "There are things out there that make those insect warriors look like children playing with toys, ancient powers that have been watching our little war with amusement." They cornered him in a mining shaft deep in the asteroid's core. Yu stood at the edge of a chasm that dropped into darkness, his hands raised but his expression defiant. "I made contact with forces beyond your imagination, Captain. They offered humanity a choice, controlled integration or complete extinction. I chose survival." "You chose betrayal," Minho replied, weapon trained on the traitor's heart. Yu smiled coldly and activated a device on his belt. The mining charges planted throughout the shaft began beeping rapidly. "The real war hasn't started yet, Captain. Everything we've been through was just preparation. The Federation thinks they've won, but they've only passed the first test." The explosion collapsed the tunnel as Yu disappeared into the mining complex's depths. Minho barely escaped with his team, but the traitor's words echoed in his mind. What had humanity really won, and what was still coming for them? The data cores recovered from Kronos Station painted a picture that made Captain Lee Minho's blood run cold. What they had thought was a simple case of military desertion was actually something far more sinister. The holographic display in the Vengeance's briefing room showed a web of connections spanning 3 star systems, with financial transactions totaling billions of credits. "Look at this pattern," Lieutenant Choi Da-un traced glowing lines between star systems on the display. "Every payment coincides with major Federation defeats during the war, but the money isn't coming from hegemony accounts." Sergeant Kim Woo-jin leaned forward, his cybernetic arm whirring softly as he manipulated the data with precise movements. "These transaction codes, I've seen them before. Black market biotech deals on the outer rim." The trail led them to the Terminus system, a forgotten corner of space where failed colonies and abandoned research stations drifted in the void. It was the perfect place to hide illegal operations, far from Federation patrols and prying eyes. Planet Terminus had once been a promising agricultural world, but solar flares from its unstable star had made the surface uninhabitable. Now it served as a graveyard for derelict ships and broken dreams, the perfect cover for someone who wanted to disappear. "Orbital scans show a facility built into the northern mountain range," reported Corporal Lim Jina from the sensor station. "Heavy shielding, but I'm detecting power signatures consistent with a major research operation." Min-ho studied the readings with growing unease. The energy patterns were too sophisticated for a simple hiding place. Someone had invested serious resources into whatever was happening down there. "Dr. Kang So-young," he said the name like a curse, former head of the Federation Genetic Research Division, disappeared 6 months before the war ended, along with classified DNA samples from every human colony. The team prepared for infiltration as the Vengeance approached the planet under stealth. Terminus looked like a wounded animal from orbit, its atmosphere poisoned by radiation, and its oceans turned to acid by decades of stellar bombardment. Nothing should be able to survive down there. They landed in a canyon, 5 kilometers from the target facility, using the rocky terrain to mask their approach. The radiation suits were bulky and uncomfortable, but necessary protection against the planet's hostile environment. "Movement sensors are picking up automated defenses," Da-un warned as they crept closer. "Gun turrets, energy barriers, and something else, bioscanners." The facility looked like a fortress carved into the mountainside. Blast doors, reinforced walls, and weapon emplacements protected multiple levels that descended deep underground. But what disturbed Min-ho most were the ships. Docked at the landing platform, sleek vessels with designs he didn't recognize. "Those aren't human ships," whispered Sergeant Oh Jin-woo, the team's demolitions expert. His scarred face was grim behind his helmet visor. "I've never seen hull configurations like that." They infiltrated through a maintenance shaft that Da-un had identified as a weak point in the facility's defenses. The corridors inside were clean, sterile, and filled with the hum of advanced technology. This wasn't some crude hideout. It was a state-of-the-art research complex. The first laboratory they discovered made Min-ho's stomach turn. Rows of containment pods lined the walls, each filled with a greenish fluid and connected to monitoring equipment. Inside the pods, he could see human forms floating in suspended animation. "Dear God," Oh Jin-woo breathed, his voice shaking with rage. "These are Federation soldiers. I recognize some of these faces from the casualty reports." The computer terminals revealed the horrible truth. These weren't casualties. They were prisoners who had been reported as killed in action. Someone had been harvesting Federation personnel throughout the war, using their genetic material for experiments that violated every law of civilized society. "Captain, you need to see this," Da-un called from another workstation. Her face was pale as she displayed the research data. "They're not just studying human genetics, they're weaponizing them." The files showed detailed analysis of human adaptive capabilities, the biological traits that had allowed humanity to colonize dozens of different worlds. But someone had twisted that research into something monstrous. They were creating biological weapons designed to target specific human genetic markers, population-specific pathogens, Min-ho read from the screen with growing horror, targeted at Earthborn humans, Mars colonists, asteroid miners. They could wipe out entire populations while leaving others untouched. The sound of approaching footsteps made them freeze. Dr. Kang So-young entered the laboratory, flanked by 2 guards in strange armor. She looked older than her photos, her once brilliant eyes now cold and calculating. "Captain Lee Min-ho," she said calmly, as if meeting an old colleague. "I've been expecting you. Your reputation for persistence is well deserved." "Release these prisoners immediately," Min-ho demanded, his weapon trained on her. "You're under arrest for crimes against humanity." So Young laughed, a sound devoid of warmth or sanity. "Crimes against humanity? I'm trying to save our species from extinction. Everything I've done has been to give humanity the tools it needs to survive. By experimenting on our own people? By preparing us for what's coming." Her eyes gleamed with fanatic fervor. The hegemony was nothing compared to the forces that are watching us, ancient powers that have controlled this galaxy for millions of years. They see humanity as a threat to their order. Oh Jinwoo moved to free the prisoners, while Da-un began downloading the research data. The guards raised their weapons, but Min-ho was faster. The firefight was brief and decisive. "You think you're heroes?" So Young gasped as she lay bleeding on the laboratory floor. "But you're just delaying the inevitable. The ancients have been patient, but our rapid expansion has forced their hand. They offered us a choice: controlled evolution or complete extinction." "What ancients?" Min-ho demanded. "Who are you working for?" "Beings that make the hegemony look like children playing with toys. They've been manipulating galactic civilization for eons, deciding which species rise and which fall. Humanity's refusal to stay in their assigned place has marked us for elimination." Alarms began blaring throughout the facility as automated systems detected the security breach. The mountain itself seemed to shake as hidden charges detonated in sequence. "The research must be preserved," So Young whispered with her dying breath. "Check the coordinates in my personal files. The real work is happening at the galaxy's edge, where the ancients are preparing their final solution." The team barely escaped as the facility collapsed around them. They managed to save most of the prisoners and recover critical data, but So Young's words haunted Min-ho as they fled through the poisoned atmosphere of Terminus. The coordinates she had mentioned led to a region of space beyond the outer rim, where no human had ever traveled. Whatever was waiting there represented a threat that made their current enemies look insignificant. As the Vengeance jumped to hyperspace, Min-ho realized their hunt for human traitors had uncovered something far more dangerous. The conspiracy wasn't just about betrayal, it was about survival. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient powers were preparing to end humanity's brief moment in the galactic spotlight. The real war was just beginning, and Earth's children were running out of time to prepare for enemies they couldn't even imagine. The network of traitors was unraveling, but each thread they followed led deeper into a web that spanned the entire galaxy. The rogue planet Shadow 7 drifted through the void like a dead god, its surface lit only by the angry red glow of its molten core. No star warmed this world. It had been cast out from its solar system eons ago, condemned to wander the galaxy's edge in eternal darkness, the perfect place for secrets that should never see light. Captain Lee Min-ho stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the planet grow larger on their screens. Long-range sensors showed a massive structure built into the northern hemisphere, its metal spires reaching up from the rocky surface like claws grasping at the stars. "That's not just a base," whispered Lieutenant Choi Da-un, her fingers dancing over the sensor controls. "It's a fortress, military-grade shields, weapon platforms, and power signatures that rival a Federation battleship." Sergeant Kim Woo-jin checked his weapon for the 100th time, his cybernetic arm whirring softly. 3 years we've been hunting these traitors. Now we find out they've been building their own military installation in the middle of nowhere. The fortress was impressive and terrifying. Crystalline towers spiraled up from the planet's crust, connected by bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Energy barriers shimmered around the entire complex, and weapon turrets tracked their approach with mechanical precision. "Incoming transmission," reported Corporal Lim Jinna from communications. "It's Admiral Bae Sung-ho." The main screen flickered to life, showing a face that Min-ho had hoped never to see again. Admiral Bae Sung-ho had been one of the Federation's greatest heroes during the early years of the Hegemony War. His tactical brilliance had saved Earth's colonies from destruction earning him the loyalty of millions and the highest military honors. Then he had vanished during the Battle of Kepler Station, his flagship found drifting empty in space. The Federation had mourned him as a hero killed in action. Now Minho realized the truth was far worse. Captain Lee Minho. Sung-Ho's voice carried across the void, calm and confident. You've been remarkably persistent. I've been following your hunt across the galaxy with great interest. Sung-Ho looked older than his photographs, his black hair now silver and his face marked by lines of stress. But his eyes still held the same sharp intelligence that had made him legendary. Admiral Bay, Minho replied coldly, you're supposed to be dead. Death would have been simpler, but sometimes survival requires difficult choices. The hologram gestured to something off-screen. You think you're hunting criminals, Captain, but we're the only ones trying to save humanity from what's really coming. As if summoned by his words, shapes began emerging from behind the rogue planet. At first, Minho thought they were asteroids or debris. Then his blood turned to ice as he realized what he was seeing. Ships, dozens of them rising from the planet's shadow, like predators awakening from sleep. But these weren't human vessels, or even hegemony craft. They were something entirely alien, sleek organic-looking things that seemed to bend space around them as they moved. What are those? Breathed Sergeant Oh Jinwoo, his scarred face pale with shock. The alien ships were beautiful and terrifying. Their hulls looked grown rather than built, with flowing curves that seemed to shift and change as Minho watched. They moved through space like living creatures, their forms rippling with energy that made the Vengeance's sensors scream warnings. Those are the ships of the ancients, Sung-Ho explained, his hologram flickering as massive energies interfered with the transmission. Beings who've ruled this galaxy for millions of years, they've been watching humanity's rapid expansion with growing concern. You're working with aliens against your own species. Minho's voice was thick with disgust. I'm working to ensure humanity has a future at all. Sung-Ho's expression hardened. The ancients control civilizations the way we control livestock, Captain. They decide which species rise and which fall. Our refusal to accept limits has marked us for elimination. The ancient ships moved closer, their alien hulls gleaming with impossible colors. Minho could feel the Vengeance shaking as exotic energies washed over them. His instruments were going crazy, registering power levels that should have been impossible. They offered us a choice, Sung-Ho continued, controlled integration into their galactic order or complete extinction. I chose survival. My network has been preparing humanity for the transition, making us valuable enough to preserve. By betraying our soldiers to the hegemony, by demonstrating that humans can be useful servants rather than dangerous rebels, every secret I sold, every battle I helped them win, was designed to show the ancients that we could be controlled. Da-Eun's hands flew over her controls as the alien vessels took attack positions around them. Captain, their technology is reading as impossible. Energy weapons that exist in multiple dimensions, shields that seem to be made of folded space itself. One of the ancient ships fired a warning shot that passed through their shields as if they weren't there. The energy beam struck their hull with surgical precision, barely missing vital systems. It was a demonstration. They could have destroyed the Vengeance instantly if they chose. You see? Sung-Ho's voice carried a note of desperate pride. They possessed technology that makes our greatest achievements look like stone tools. Fighting them would be suicide. Maybe, Minho replied, his fingers moving to the weapons controls. But humans don't surrender. We never have. Then you'll die as fools rather than live as subjects. The ancient ships attacked with devastating precision. Their weapons fired beams of pure energy that seemed to ignore the laws of physics, striking from angles that shouldn't exist. The Vengeance's shields collapsed within seconds, and her hull began buckling under impossible forces. But Minho had learned something during his years of hunting traitors. Sometimes the only way to win was to refuse to play by the enemy's rules. Da-Eun, overload the hyperdrive, he ordered. Jinnah, broadcast everything we've recorded on all Federation frequencies. The galaxy needs to know what's happening here. Sir, overloading the drive will create a massive energy pulse, Da-Eun warned. It might damage their ships, but it'll definitely destroy us. Better to die fighting than live as slaves. The Vengeance began to shake violently as her hyperdrive built toward catastrophic overload. The ancient ships seemed to sense the danger, pulling back with fluid grace. Even beings with godlike technology respected the power of a ship willing to sacrifice itself. In that moment of confusion, Minho fired every weapon they had at the nearest ancient vessel. To his amazement, some of their shots actually connected. The alien ship's shields flickered, revealing that even the ancients weren't invulnerable. "Impossible," breathed Sung Ho from his fortress. "Their technology is millions of years ahead." "Of ours?" "Maybe," Minho replied as the Vengeance broke free from the ancient formation, "but they've never fought humans before. The escape was narrow and desperate. The Vengeance jumped to hyperspace just as the ancient ships closed in, her hull scarred and her crew shaken but alive. Behind them, the rogue planet Shadow 7 faded into darkness, but Minho knew they would return. He had learned the terrible truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. The Hegemony War hadn't been humanity's greatest test. It had been their audition. Ancient powers had been watching, judging whether humans deserved to exist or should be eliminated as a threat to galactic order. The traitors thought they were being pragmatic, trading freedom for survival. But they had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, the refusal to accept that any choice was the only choice. The real war was coming, and it would decide not just humanity's fate, but the future of free will in the galaxy. The hunt for traitors was over. The battle for humanity's soul was about to begin. The Vengeance limped through hyperspace like a wounded animal, her hull scarred by weapons that shouldn't exist, and her crew shaken by truths that changed everything. Captain Lee Min-ho stood in the ship's medical bay, watching Dr. Park Hee-jin treat burns caused by ancient energy weapons that had passed through their shields like they were made of paper. "How many dead?" he asked quietly. "3 crew members," she replied without looking up from her patient, "but everyone else will recover. We were lucky, Captain. Those alien weapons could have vaporized us instantly." Lucky. Minho almost laughed. At the word. They had discovered that humanity's greatest victory was actually their first test, that their heroes were traitors trying to save them from extinction, and that ancient gods controlled the galaxy from the shadows. Lucky wasn't the word he would use. The journey back to Federation space took 6 days. 6 days of analyzing the data they had gathered and trying to understand the scope of what they faced. The ancient ships they had encountered represented technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. Weapons that fired through multiple dimensions, shields made of folded space, and hulls that seemed to heal themselves when damaged. Lieutenant Choi Da-yoon worked around the clock, going through the intelligence they had recovered from Admiral Bae Sung-ho's fortress. What she found painted a picture that made the Hegemony War look like a minor border dispute. "Captain, you need to see this," she called from her workstation, her face pale with exhaustion. "The ancient network extends throughout the galaxy. They've been manipulating civilizations for millions of years. The holographic display showed a web of connections spanning thousands of star systems. Ancient outposts hidden in dead systems, puppet governments controlling major trade routes, and slave species who thought they were free while dancing to strings pulled by cosmic masters." "The Hegemony Empire?" Minho asked, though he already suspected the answer. Controlled by the ancients from the beginning, they were supposed to defeat humanity quickly and efficiently, proving that we weren't a threat worth worrying about. When we fought back and won, it triggered a reassessment. Sergeant Kim Woo-jin studied the tactical data with his cybernetic eye, calculating odds and possibilities with mechanical precision. "How many ancient ships are we talking about?" "Unknown, but conservative estimates put their fleet strength at 10,000 vessels, each one more advanced than anything in our databases." The numbers were overwhelming, but Minho had learned something important during their encounter at Shadow 7. The ancients weren't invulnerable. Their ships could be damaged, their plans could be disrupted, and most importantly, they could be surprised. The Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, home to humanity's birth world and the Federation capital. Earth looked beautiful from space, its blue oceans and white clouds unmarked by the scars of war that mark so many other human worlds. But Minho knew that beauty was an illusion. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient predators were preparing to end humanity's brief moment in the galactic spotlight. The Federation Council chambers had been hastily converted into a war room. Admiral Kim Hyun stood before a massive holographic display showing the galaxy, with red markers indicating known ancient positions and yellow zones marking areas of suspected infiltration. "Gentlemen, ladies," Hyun addressed the assembled military. "Leaders, Captain Lee's mission has uncovered a threat that makes the hegemony look like children playing with toys." Minho took the podium, his scarred face grim as he began his report. "The human traitors we've been hunting weren't motivated by greed or cowardice. They genuinely believed they were saving humanity from extinction." He activated the holographic recordings from their encounter with the ancient fleet. The assembled officers watched in stunned silence as alien ships moved through space like living creatures, their weapons casually destroying targets that should have been protected by the best Federation shields. "The ancients have been controlling galactic civilization for millions of years," Minho continued. "They decide which species rise and which fall. Our rapid expansion and refusal to accept limits has marked us as a threat to their order." General Nambora leaned forward, her face hard with determination. "So they want to eliminate us? They offered our traitors a choice: controlled integration as a servant species or complete extinction. Admiral Bay and his network chose what they thought was the lesser evil." "But you disagree," Admiral Hyun stated. "Humanity doesn't kneel, sir, we never have. These ancients have been playing God for so long, they've forgotten that some species refuse to be controlled." The debate that followed was intense but brief. Some officers argued for negotiation, others for hiding in the outer rim until humanity could develop better technology. But the majority reached the same conclusion that Minho had: fighting and dying free was better than living as slaves. President Yang Mi-kyung addressed the Federation from the same office where she had announced victory over the hegemony. But her expression was grimmer now, her words carrying the weight of a species facing extinction. "My fellow humans across all worlds and stations, we have learned that our greatest victory was only the beginning of our greatest challenge. Ancient powers seek to control or destroy us, but they have made one critical error: they don't understand what it means to be human." The mobilization that followed dwarfed even the desperate preparations for the hegemony war. Every shipyard worked around the clock, building vessels designed with hard-learned lessons about ancient technology. Every research facility focused on developing weapons that might penetrate their impossible defenses. But more importantly, humanity began reaching out to other species who had suffered under ancient control. The galaxy was full of civilizations who thought they were free while dancing to cosmic puppet strings. Some could be awakened, others could be allies, and a few might even be willing to fight. Captain Lee Minho found himself promoted to admiral, commanding a new kind of unit, the Galactic Liberation Fleet. Their mission was simple in concept but impossible in execution: hunt down every ancient outpost, free every enslaved species, and break the chains that had bound the galaxy for millions of years. "The ancients think they're untouchable because they've been unchallenged for so long," Minho addressed his new fleet commanders. "But they've never faced a species that sees impossible as just another word for difficult." The first strikes began immediately. Human task forces hit ancient monitoring stations in dead systems, disrupting their surveillance network. Federation diplomats made contact with species who had thought they were alone, offering alliance against their hidden masters. The ancients responded with predictable arrogance, sending punitive expeditions to remind their subjects why rebellion was futile. But they found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Humanity didn't fight fair. They used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, and weapons that violated every rule of civilized warfare. When ancient ships proved too advanced to defeat in direct combat, humans rammed them with cargo vessels packed with explosives. When their shields couldn't be penetrated, humans found ways to attack from inside. The war that followed would rage across the galaxy for generations. Humanity would win some battles and lose others, but they would never surrender. Every defeat would teach them something new. Every victory would inspire another species to join their cause. Admiral Lee Min-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship Defiance, watching human and alien vessels prepare for the next offensive. The hunt for traitors had revealed a galaxy-spanning conspiracy, but it had also shown humanity something precious. They were not alone in their desire for freedom. The real war was just beginning, and it would decide whether the galaxy belonged to ancient gods or to the species brave enough to challenge them. The hunt for human traitors was over. The hunt for galactic freedom was eternal. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient powers were learning that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to accept that any master, no matter how powerful, had the right to rule them. The war was over. The hunt would never end. Humanity would not go quietly into the darkness. The Ender.